So, this episode is going to be all about Sir Richard Branson and his failures and his businesses and just about him and what he thinks and all these things. And there's going to be more after the intro. As always. As always. As every day. Because it's amazing and I still enjoy it after a year, which is quite nothing compared to other people. But yeah, it is what it is. And with that being said, hello and welcome back to the next episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. So if you actually want to listen to the podcast and you are on the YouTube video, then please have a look into the description. The first link, I guess, should actually be the link to the podcast. And you can listen to it on just Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Castbox, wherever you might be, there's also the podcast. But before we even go through the podcast, I'm having two things to tell you. First of all, there's going to be some highlights in the episode itself, so I'm highlighting some things that I know what I am going to talk about, and also that I have some sort of a script and whatnot, so that it is a little bit more fluent. And these highlights are going to be down in a PDF, and this PDF is uploaded to a Google Drive folder, and you can download it. So you do not even have to go through the whole video, but you can also quite read it, which is something that I think pretty cool. And on the other hand, there's also the music thing. I was just doing like this because this is my right side, but it is actually my left side where the screeny thing there is. But never mind, If you are willing to add some background music, which I think would add something tremendously important to the whole episode, but it is hurting my post-production capabilities. Therefore, if you're willing to have some background music, there's also a link down in the description. Just hit it up, look it up, and you can use it. Unfortunately, I guess it might not be possible for users on mobile, but it's still, I hope it is just good enough, the episode anyway. So yeah, as we are having a look at the left side of the screen, there is a CNBC Make It article, how Richard Branson started Virgin Atlantic with a billboard selling $39 flights, which is pretty cool. And it caught my interest and it caught my attention, and I thought it's pretty interesting, because he just started a fucking airline. Is it called airline? I think it is called airline, isn't it? And just like that, just like, okay, I'm just gonna have a fucking airline now. Of course, he did it after he was successful with another company or with his group, I guess, if I'm not quite wrong here. So he definitely had some money, he definitely had the money to just buy a private jet then in the end, or a private flight in the end. But still pretty fucking cool, just having your own airline, just having your own flights, and just doing it actually from one day to the other. It's pretty amazing, But let's see what he's talking about. Let's see what the article is all about. And this article, by the way, is from Karen Gilchrist, or Gilchrist, whatever it might be. So the link to the article itself is also going to be down in the description, but it is also in the PDF with the notes. So if you're just only downloading the notes, it's completely fine. You're basically having everything that you probably are going to need. Only when the British entrepreneur was met with a cancelled flight in the early 80s, it inspired another response too, which is a new business. His American Airlines flight was suddenly cancelled, which was kind of the reason, as they said above, to start his own airline, because he was pissed off that his fucking flight was cancelled. So he did all a good entrepreneur do and looked for a solution. And he then said, which is now a quote, "The next day I rang up Boeing and said, I'm thinking of starting an airline." The then 30-something marched to the back of the airport, gave them his credit card, hoping it would bounce, and hired a plane. So he hired a plane. He then borrowed a blackboard, wrote as a joke, Virgin Airlines. So Virgin, to just give a little bit of context, is kind of the name of the group, first of all, and also all the companies, or quite a lot of companies that he's having. It is just a common name that he is using. I don't actually know why. It might be on the Wikipedia page of him, which we are then going to go through as well. But I don't know why. I don't know why he's calling everything Virgin, even though it might not actually be kind of the best name to just give your company and or your companies. But yeah, or actually also your holding company. I assume the Virgin Group is a holding, but I'm not quite sure. I'm also not that educated in that space. When we arrived in the BVI, somebody said, I skipped a line. He then borrowed a blackboard, wrote as a joke, Virgin Airlines, one-way 39 to the Virgin Islands, and filled up the flight with all the bummed passengers, he said. So when we arrived at the BVI, somebody said, sharpen up your service a bit and you could be in the airline business, Branson recalled. And it is pretty interesting. First of all, that you're able to just fucking hire a plane. That's cool. And I am just thinking about the fact whether the $39 actually made up for all the cost, but I'm not quite sure. Like, it really highly depends on how big the plane was. I assume it was like not a really big one. I'm just not assuming that it is just a Boeing or something. I really am not assuming that. Or I don't think so as well, It would actually be cool, just having your private jet or private plane being like a fucking Boeing, which is a really, really fucking big plane. I don't know how big it is actually. It's probably just really big, but I don't know, like in data. I don't have the data for it, but still pretty cool. And also just pretty cool that, because I don't really think that the $39 just made up for all the costs. So he basically just solved a problem for quite a lot of people just on this specific day. I don't know if it did in terms of the whole company itself, with the whole airline itself. But I still think pretty good idea, and especially if you are able to do it. So why shouldn't you be doing it? So the next day I rang up Boeing and said, I've just had a bad experience and I'm thinking of starting an airline called Virgin. Do you have any secondhand 747s for sale? Which is the Boeing 747, which is, I think, besides the 747 MAX, the biggest airplane there is. But I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure about that. I think it is. But yeah, even though at this point in time, I think it is actually the biggest flying one, since the MAX isn't flying any longer, which is good, really good, because they actually have to solve that fucking problem. Not good. Really not good. But he was convinced by Branson and agreed to lease him the second-hand 747 aircraft for a year while he tried to get the business off the ground. I think that was the thing that put Virgin on the map, said Branson, who launched Virgin Atlantic in 1984. We took on British Airways, Pan Am, TWA with their hundreds of planes. Yeah, they actually have a fucking lot of planes. This is totally the truth. But there's something else, because the rest, as they said, is history. Shortly afterwards, a Boeing representative named R.J. Wilson met with Branson to discuss his airline ambitions. But Wilson was not convinced by the name Virgin, which is quite one of the reasons why I just before was talking about it. I don't know either if it is the best name, but still, it seems to be the case that the name doesn't really matter, because it is a fucking company now. I don't know how well it is doing since it's having a lot of competition, but I think there just has to be some sort of a reason why you should be taking it, or why you could be taking it, or why you are taking this company or this flight instead of a regular Lufthansa or whatever it might be, whatever flight company it might be, whatever airline it might be. There must be a reason to differentiate, because I don't really think that he is doing it okay, I'm just gonna have a fucking airline and that's fucking it. No, I think he's actually doing something very or relatively specific with it. But let's actually have a look at just Richard Branson himself, because I myself didn't know a lot about him, besides the fact that he is really, really rich. I think it's been 4.1 billion. Yeah, it's 4.1 billion, which is something which is still not as much as Elon Musk, I guess. Or is Elon Musk at 4.8 or something? I kind of assume that Elon Musk net worth. Okay, yeah. He has a net worth of 23.6 billion and is listed by Forbes as the 40th richest person in the world. He's the longest tenured CEO of any automotive manufacturer globally. Born and raised in Pretoria, South Africa, Musk moved to Canada when he was 17 to attend Queen's University. But anyway, Sir Richard Branson, or Richard Charles Nicholas Branson, born on the 18th of July 1950, is a British business magnate, investor, author and philanthropist. He founded the Virgin Group in the 1970s, which controls more than 400 companies in various fields. It kind of reminds me on Tony Robbins, because he's also having just a bunch of a lot of different companies. Just really, really, really a lot. It is insane. It really, truly is. In March 2000, Branson was knighted at Buckingham Palace for service to entrepreneurship for his work in retail, music and transport, with interests in land, air, sea and space travel. His taste for adventure and for his humanitarian work, he has become a prominent global figure. In 2007, he was placed in the Time 100 most influential people in the world list. In April 2018, Forbes listed Branson's estimated net worth at US $5.1 billion. And I also like his signature. It's actually pretty cool. I also like the fact that they just didn't use a clean one, but it is more like, okay, you can actually see that that it is written, that somebody wrote it. Well, yeah. But if we're having a look at the right side now, his other names, for example, are Old Beardy. Maybe because of the beard, but I'm not quite sure about that. Years active, 1966 to the present, children 3, parents, relatives, and what not. So let's have a look at his early life. Branson was born in Blackheath, London, the eldest of 3 children of Eve Branson, a former ballet dancer and air hostess, and Edward James Branson, a barrister. And now what we're seeing there is that, so just the father was a barista, then the mother was a just dancer, and also entrepreneur on the other hand, which is just a little bit back down actually, kind of. I don't know why it is like just separate. But what you can see there is that besides his grandfather, which has actually been I'm actually going to show you. His grandfather, the Right Honourable Sir George Arthur Harvin Branson, was a judge of the High Court of Justice and a Privy Councillor, which is kind of the only person that has been quite quote-unquote famous or quote-unquote successful in just really kind of regular terms if you're just thinking about it. But he's still fucking successful, even though also he was really bad at school, which is also going to be something that's up or down there. So he definitely was able to do something with whom he was and with the circumstances he had or he was brought up in. And with the people around him. Like, it is still amazing, and I just really like to see that that first of all, just somebody that wasn't poor, I think they definitely weren't poor, and a lot of people that are rich now or that are successful now, they just were brought up in a very, very poor environment, which is something that I just have seen, like a ton of people, like Gary Vaynerchuk, for example. Then I would also say Les Brown, the motivational speaker. I think he was also brought up in just really, really poor conditions. Then McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, they both, which is pretty interesting, and just a lot of other people. There's actually a list on Wikipedia when you're just typing in rags and riches. And then there's a kind of a section like history and fictional history and whatnot. And there's actually a pretty long list of people, and really, really famous people actually as well, that were brought up in very poor conditions and still were able to just get to something, as well as Ralph Lauren from Polo, or actually, I don't know actually how to pronounce him. Nevertheless, there's a lot of people that were brought up in very, very poor environments and were able to get to something. And on the other hand, there's also people like Richard Branson that were brought up in just really kind of regular, quote unquote, just environments and still also were able to just get to something. So his parents weren't rich. Nobody was rich, and he sucked at school, and a lot of different other things, which is, by the way, also something that we can often see. So, often it just depends on what you think about as often. But some entrepreneurs definitely were really, really, really shitty in school. And on the other hand, there's also been quite some people that attended Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, all these really big, famous schools. Branson has dyslexia and had poor academic performance. On his last day at school, his headmaster, Robert Dreyson, told him he would either end up in prison or become a millionaire. Branson's parents were supportive of his endeavors from an early age. His mother was an entrepreneur. One of her most successful ventures was building and selling wooden tissue boxes and waste paper bins. In London, he started off squatting between 1967 and 1968. So he started squatting, just working out, Yeah. Never mind. The early business career. After failed attempts to grow and sell both Christmas trees and Budgerigars. What is Budgerigars? Budgerigar. A small, gregarious Australian parakeet, which is green with a yellow head in the wild. It is popular as a cage bird. It is a bird. Oh, I see. I didn't know that it is just that in English. I know the German word, and it's definitely not Badbarichka or whatever. But yeah, no, I do not want to just take a note. Branson launched a magazine named Student in 1966. The first issue of Student appeared in January 1968, and a year later, Branson's net worth was estimated at $50,000. Though not initially as successful as hoped, the magazine later became a vital component of the mail-order record business Branson started from the same church he used for Student magazine. Branson used the magazine to advertise popular albums, driving his record sales. He interviewed several prominent personalities of the late 1960s for the magazine, including Mike Jagger, and R.D. Lane. His business sold records for considerably less than the high street outlets, especially the chain W.H. Smith. Branson once said, "There is no point in starting your own business unless you do it out of a sense of frustration." At the time, many products were sold under restrictive marketing agreements that limited discounting, despite efforts in the 1950s and 1960s to limit retail price maintenance. Branson eventually started a record shop in Oxford Street in London in 1971. He was questioned in connection with the selling of records that had been declared export stock. The matter was never brought before a court because Branson agreed to repay any unpaid purchase tax of 33% and a £70,000 fine. His parents remortgaged the family home to help pay the settlement, which is quite fucked up and which is quite a lot of fucking money. But still, as we can see there, and it is just a topic later on as well, we can see that now it is broken. It's loading. I'm seeing just things loading there. I hope everything is fine. Also, this is working, but we're gonna see. But what I want to say is that what we can see is that it definitely involved some failure. And failure is definitely also something that Seth Godin is often talking about, because it is indeed a pretty important thing, at least also in my point of view, because failing shows you some things. Failing can show you that whatever you're just trying to do is not gonna work out, or it is just showing you that whatever you're doing at this point in time, not in the very micro thing or macro thing, but indeed in the micro thing, that this is just not working. Whatever you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to build, it is just not working as you want it to work, Therefore, just maybe trying out something else, maybe trying out a new approach to the whole exact same subject, to the exact same problem, might be a thing to just try out, might be a thing to just do, might be a thing to just move along with. But as I said before, there's also a whole section of failed things of Richard Branson, the failed business ventures. Branson has been involved in a number of failed business ventures such as Virgin Cola, Virgin Cars, Virgin Publishing, Virgin Clothing, and Virgin Bridges. Brides. I'm sorry, not bridges, but brides, which is honeymooner, marriage partner wife, blushing bride, war bride, GI bride. I think, well, yeah, I don't actually know. However, Branson holds an unusually optimistic view of failure. He has written, I suppose the secret to bouncing back is not only to be unafraid of failure, but to use them as motivational and learning tools. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes as long as you don't make the same ones over and over and over again. Even though, world record attempts. The capsular from the Virgin Atlantic flyer, he's also in a space mission things. I don't know if it is about just for public purposes, like Elon Musk is doing and Jeff Bezos is doing with Blue Origin and or SpaceX. I don't know. I don't really know what he's trying to do, but he's having a lot of things. But what I was willing to say is that in terms of just making mistakes over and over again, I do not really think that it is that easy to just not do them over and over again. I do think that doing the exact same failure twice, or the exact same mistake twice or 3 times, and I would even say like 10 times, it's not going to be beneficial. It's going to be really fucked up in the end, and you're going to feel like just a dumb motherfucker. But in the end, I do have to say, there has to be a line between okay, it's okay, and okay, it's not okay. And I think like after 10 attempts or 10 times making the exact same mistake, it is like maybe you should just trying something new. Maybe you should just change the circumstances. Maybe you should just change your surroundings. Maybe you should just change something because something is obviously wrong, or something is not doing as it should be doing, or you are not doing as you should be doing, and you might have to change something up. You might have to do something about that, or you actually should be doing something about it. If it is like really, if you're just also seeing it yourself. If you're also seeing it yourself that something is wrong and something is like not as it should be. But I think this is going to be the end of the episode. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've enjoyed it as well. If there is some questions, please just hit me up in the comments down below, or hit me up on the social media site you prefer the most. Whether it be TikTok, whether it be Instagram, whether it be LinkedIn, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Tumblr, which I'm actually not using, so please don't use Tumblr, or email. Use whatever is just the best for you, and I'm gonna be there, of course. But I'm And with that being said, I wish you the best health, happiness, and also success. And yeah, please don't forget about being a nice person, which is going to be pretty good for your legacy. 3 other questions that I'm having for you are: why are you here? What are you trying to change? And what is bothering you the most? These 3 questions are hopefully going to show you your purpose and maybe even some business ideas. And with that being said, I'll see you the next time. So please consider subscribing to the podcast and the YouTube channel, whatever you are on at this point in time, because I don't know. And I'm going to see you the next time. I at least hope.